And now a word from our sponsors. Horace, what can I buy to become the life of the party besides the Undercover Lover t-shirt? That's a question we always get asked. Well, you can always get yourself an Undercover Lover or a Green Goddess or a White Rabbit Radio beer stein. Yes, they've been reported to magically fill up on their own. Yeah, parties are just reported to overflow with beer. It's amazing. Amazing product, all for the very low cost of $23.99. Yes, and if you have problems getting up in the morning, you can always get yourself a White Rabbit Radio, Green Goddess, or Undercover Lover coffee mug. It'll help you wake up faster. Yeah, this stuff is reported to work very, very well. And those are all for the low price of $15. And all the proceeds go to support our servers. So if you're having problems becoming the life of the party, get yourself a beer stein. You're having problems getting up in the morning, well, put yours truly in front of you. As you drink your morning coffee. And now back to our regular programming. We're going to talk about one of the more legitimate mysteries of Western civilization. And this is something no one really has any explanation for as of yet. And answer some questions regarding my particular views of Mars. And Mars has a great deal of mystery to it because it's always regarded as a planet of war. The god of war, and war, of course, is a very human activity. And what's even more mysterious about Mars is all the attention the little moonlets get. It has these little moonlets, Phobos and Deimos, and the Phobos has come under an increasing amount of attention from the European Space Agency. But let's go over when exactly they were discovered, because that's where the mystery actually begins. Phobos was discovered by an astronomer, A.S.F. Hall, on August 18, 1877, at the United States Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. And that's where the first problems come in. That's where the first problems come in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up something from solarviews.com. It's on the dwarf planet Ceres. And all during the 1800s, the telescopes became more high-tech. 76 years prior to the founding of Phobos, Ceres was discovered by an astronomer, Giuseppe Piazzi, a monk in Sicily. And it was a founding director of the Palermo Astronomical Observatory. And Ceres was found within a gap between Mars and Jupiter. And Ceres is a dwarf planet. It's not that easy to see, but at the time, telescope technology was really coming up to speed. And, of course, all during this time, if you look back, you're going to have a great deal of discoveries from the late 1700s. Let's see, Uranus was discovered in 1781, all up until the time of, let's say, Phobos and Deimos were discovered in 1877. A lot is going on during that 100-year period in astronomy because telescopes were becoming more powerful. They could see more. But here you have Giuseppe Piazzi looking between Mars and a gap between Mars and Jupiter in 1801, and he finds Ceres. You have all this stuff going on, and I want you to read this piece. It'll be up on my Twitter. You're going to find out all about how even the word asteroid came up, because at the time an argument was going on whether or not these little planets they were finding were planets or whether they're asteroids. They were seeing asteroids. That's how high tech. That's how great telescope technology was in the early 1800s, early 19th century. But Phobos was not found until 1877. So you had basically 70-some years of serious telescope technology coming out. You have Giuseppe Piazzi finding Ceres, looking between Mars and Jupiter. Everyone is always looking at Mars because Mars is a big deal in our history and many other histories. You have the Japanese astronomers at the time looking at it. You have all these different people looking at all these different planets for like 100 years before they find Phobos and Deimos. You know, one morning A.S.F. Hall is working in 1877, and he just ups and finds Phobos and Deimos, these two little moonlets circling in orbit around Mars, and it became a pretty big deal based on a few simple facts. You know, why did it take them so long to find them? And that's a question no one can answer, because they're all looking at Mars. I mean, back in 1801, again, they are standing, Giuseppe Piazzi sitting there looking at 1801 all around the Mars-Jupiter, the gap between Mars and Jupiter, to find, actually to find little Ceres, this little dwarf planet. But if you read the piece I put up, you're going to see something quite odd. They should have found them long before they did. Now, under conventional wisdom, they should have probably been found somewhere in 1860 with this new observatory. That's what the actual scientists say. They should have been able to find them earlier, but in reality, it should have been a lot before, a lot earlier in 1860. And there are two dominant theories about why they didn't find Phobos and Deimos. The first one is that there was a global, worldwide conspiracy to conceal them. Some people actually believe that. That they're all looking at Mars, they're just not telling us Phobos is there because there was a global conspiracy from the Japanese, all the different astronomers who were, getting all these high-tech telescopes for 100 years. There was just a global conspiracy not to tell us about them. And there's another rational explanation that isn't so rational, really, under our science these days, and that would be that they weren't there. The reason that Giuseppe Piazzi found Ceres and is staring at Mars, but yet he can't find Phobos or Deimos would be a whole lot easier to see to most astronomers. The reason that he didn't find it is because they weren't there. How could they not be there? Well, someone put them there in 1877 or around about that time. Someone flew them there, or they landed there, or they showed up there. But there's only two rational explanations. Either someone's hiding this, and you can read the article, you can do your homework and find all the discoveries for 100 years. And then all of a sudden someone says, well, here's Phobos and Deimos. Here's these two little moonlets. All of a sudden they just show up there. They just pop up and everyone can see them all of a sudden. For 100 years no one's seeing them, then all of a sudden you can see them. There's not really a rational explanation. Either they were hiding them, someone didn't want to tell the world about them, all these astronomers were in some big conspiracy theory, and some people actually believe that, or they just showed up there. Frankly, I don't know which is true, but there's a lot of odd stuff with it, and that's where it becomes, that is just a warm-up act. What's even odder yet among the two little moonlets circling Mars is that there was a book that came out, 150 years prior at least, called Gulliver's Travels. Most of you have heard of it, I'm guessing. Especially my white listeners. All the white rabbits heard of Gulliver's Travels and probably have read it. It came out in 1726 and was amended according to Wikipedia in 1735. It's a novel by an Anglo-Irish writer and clergyman named Jonathan Swift. And in Gulliver's Travel in 1726, he makes a point of saying Mars has two moons. Two moons. So we have Jonathan Swift in Western Civilization, a great epic, Gulliver's Travels, saying Mars has two moons, alluding to Mars has two moons. We have a famous astronomer who finds Ceres, Giuseppe Piazzi, in 1801. Then we have Phobos and Deimos show up, and they find it in 1877, Asaph Hall, in the United States Naval Observatory, Washington, D.C. We have Gulliver's Travel, back in 1726, talking about Mars having two moons, but they aren't discovered until Asaph Hall discovers them on August 18th, 1877, 150 years later, 151 years later. Very, very odd. And no one really has an explanation for it. It's a legitimate mystery in Western civilization. And this is how the Richard Hoaglands make their money. This is why people talk about them, that there is legitimate mysteries to point out. And when it comes to Phobos and Deimos, especially Phobos, I would have to hand it that they're on to something, because according to the European Space Agency, Phobos has some odd things going on with it that has even made the Wikipedia. The first odd thing going on with it is that it's leaking. Yeah, it's leaking. What is it leaking? Well, they use the term outgassing. It means something's under pressure inside leaking out. We don't really know what it's leaking. It's just Phobos is leaking something. Very strange, very odd, and that's the second thing that's pretty odd about it that the world found out, is that it's somewhere in the area of 40% hollow. It's a little hollow moon that's leaking. Moons aren't supposed to be hollow, and they're not supposed to be leaking. Or outgassing, as they say. Very strange stuff. And they've gotten a big tiff, which was kind of odd. I've been asked about this. European Space Agency got into a big fight. Richard Hoagland is always writing about this stuff. You know, he saw the face on Mars. I can't see it, but that's not my specialty. That doesn't mean it's there. It means probably the direct opposite. He's probably right on something. But the European Space Agency picked a fight with Richard Hoagland over his views on Phobos, which I found extremely strange. Because the European Space Agency has put out all kinds of wild facts on Phobos. They've released pictures which look strange to most. To most people look strange. It's in a very strange orbit. Everything about the thing is just strange. The discovery, everything just speaks to mystery. But they released Phobos showing a lot of different right angles and stuff like that. And right angles can exist somewhat in nature. They just don't exist a lot. And there are a lot of strange things with it. I'll give Richard Hoagland credit. But Richard Hoagland has to be onto something in regarding Phobos for one reason alone. The ESA attacked him. Why would they attack him? Why wouldn't they just sit silent about it? If I didn't want to bring attention to something he was saying, I would just sit silent. I would say nothing. But the fact that they attack him tells me that he might be onto something. You know, he's always talking about they're going to make big disclosures regarding this solar system and stuff like that. Richard Hoagland has said this for years, decades. And eventually he's probably going to be right on something. That's just, you know, I mean, he's white. He's going to find the truth eventually, if he's looking for it. But the fact that they attacked him is quite, the answer would be quite simple. The answer would be quite simple. He's onto something. Now, what he's onto, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. Do I think it's Noah's Ark or something? I have no idea. There's something up with it, though. I'm willing to say there's something up with it. There's too many odd things going on with the thing. Too many things that even they're admitting to. I mean, you can't have a moon leaking, and you have a hollow moon. What is it? What is there? You know, what's in there? Buzz Aldrin had said we need to get back there. There's something crazy going on there. He said that on Fox News. So there's a couple different characters involved in saying this, but Richard Hoagland was first and foremost, and the ESA released some crazy information about it that someone like him latched onto and wrote some different reports. And you can go to his website, Enterprise Mission, and read his Phobos reports. The Gulliver's Travel, Jonathan Swift stuff. It's all very strange, very, very strange stuff. So that's one of the reasons why would the ESA. You're not going to pick a fight. If you're a legitimate, the European Space Agency is not going to pick a fight with an alternative news and researcher unless they want to call attention to him. And you're obviously not going to agree with them, because agreeing with them, you say, well, that guy's crazy. You know, you're agreeing with him face on Mars. What are you agreeing to? You're not going to agree to him. You're just going to call, you're going to pick a fight with him and call attention to something he's saying. So he's clearly onto something about it. What he's onto, I just don't know. But the facts behind Phobos and Deimos are very strange. The naming itself was very, very interesting, especially to listeners of my show and especially myself. This was the most interesting part. They were suggested by a man named Henry Madden, and he was the science master of Eton. And the names are right out of Book 15 of the Iliad. If you ever read the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, in which the god Ares summons dread, which is Deimos, and fear, which is Phobos. This is where Ares kind of get into it with Zeus. They start getting into it with Zeus. Ares, of course, in the Babylonian tradition is Nergal. He's a god of war. He's pretty dark character. He's a serious warlord. At least that's the way most translate it. Most go across the spectrum, like we do on this podcast about linking up Greek gods with others. But Ares summons dread and fear. Deimos and Phobos in Book 15 of the Iliad, which is fascinating stuff. I'll put up Book 15 of the Iliad. You can read it online.